Okay, so here we are again. This is Joe Volpe, publisher of Corrida Canadesa, here on behalf of Corcan Media Group and Go Live TV. Now, I wanted to pick up on the topic that we've been dealing with recently, and that's immigration. Yesterday, we touched on immigration reality and the law and the consequences on families and children. We didn't finish that discussion, so we asked Mr. Borax, Richard Borax, immigration lawyer, to join us again once again today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was good of you to come here after the beating that we gave each other.
Well,
But
the scars are still bleeding, sir.
well, no, this is an important topic, though, and so I think just as a recap, if you don't mind, if I missed something out, tell me. We were talking about the way that the immigration is a joint responsibility, a shared responsibility.
That's right.
So there's the federal authority, which has the right, the obligation to grant entry, to give status, and to remove people if they don't want them for whatever reason.
Yep.
And then we have the provincial government. The provincial government determines what happens to people once they're here, essentially settlement, education, in particular education. We talked about the Education Act giving the province and through the school boards, the schools, a complete authority to educate the children. In fact, it's an obligation. They have to educate kids.
Even if they're illegal.
Well, there's no such thing as illegal in my view. That's where you and I contested
That's
each
right.
other, right? So if somebody who's not here as a result of the status given by the federal government,
That's right.
they must still go to school. And if they go to school, they receive, quote, the protection, end of quote, of the Ontario law against the incursions of federal immigration enforcement officers. That's where we left off.
Yeah, okay, I'll accept that.
Well, because an immigration officer can't walk into a school and remove kids.
Yes, he can. Well, let's not rehash that.
Well, no, but I think it's an important point to make.
Okay,
You know,
no.
because you've got, they're not going to do it now, it's summertime. But during the school year, immigration officers have been known to stake kids out
Again,
and follow
Joe,
them to
they
school.
have the right to do that.
But common sense says you can't do
I
that.
am tired of hearing that common sense trumps the law.
No,
And
well-
we've been going, I can put up maybe for a week, a month, a couple of years, where we say it's common sense, let it slide. This has been going on for years.
Of course it's going on for years, but where we left off, and I don't mean to reanimate the same discussion
sure.
we had before, but you know, I think it was December 10th, 2015.
That's right.
2015, the Supreme Court ruled on made a decision on what the obligations are of enforcement officers and others. And the Supreme Court said you must always make a decision in the best interests of the kids, of the children.
Yep.
And if there is somebody in this world who thinks it's a good idea to separate parents from kids, I want them to come forward.
You know,
Are
Joe,
you one of them?
You know, Joe, I think what you've done just now is pointed out that in December 10th, 2015, the world changed concerning anything to do with immigration and children. So my argument that those police officers have the right to walk into the school, that was my argument. And that argument now is really weak,
Extremely so.
really weak because of the decision of the Supreme Court. And people like me and the immigration officers and the minister and throughout the entire system, anything with kids, we have to reassess our position. The position I took yesterday and the one I started off with
But you're
today.
not the one that's making the decisions. You know, quite frankly, it's the immigration department, the immigration officials who advise the minister. They usually do it on a weekly basis. They're on a daily basis in conversation with his chief of staff. And what happens is they say, okay, this is what the Supreme Court said. What do you want us to do about it?
Did they tell the minister about that Supreme
Well,
Court
they
decision?
have an obligation to do that.
Well, and that's the real issue here today. We discussed it yesterday, and today we're going forward on that discussion.
Well,
And
here's how we're going to go forward on it.
Okay.
You know, I don't want, I want to interrupt you because we're going to rehash
Sure.
the principle of this a long time. But one of the reasons that it's important to think in these terms is that the Immigration Act And the presence of a lot of these children from families who haven't got status, these are legal terms. What
Sure.
it means is they don't have the papers to be here,
Yeah.
but they're here. They're working, they're paying their taxes, they're making their payroll contributions,
Yep.
they're paying their rent, they're doing everything that they can because they want to stay out of sight, and their kids are going to school. Well, the provincial government is making an investment in those kids.
How much?
Well, 12,300 right here in Ontario for every child that goes to school. Do you think that that's a reasonable investment?
That is a brilliant investment on one condition, that those kids aren't kicked out later on. Otherwise, it's money down the toilet.
Well, you waste that money, of course.
So that investment in kids, we all know what's happening in society. We simply don't have people. That's why we have an immigration act. That's why we have immigration coming into the country. And we welcome the kids coming to the country.
But we don't really have an aggressive immigration policy. You know that what happens is once a year the minister stands up in the House of Commons and says, the plan for next year is that we're going to get 250,000, and everybody says, oh wow, 250,000, they're going to come in my backyard.
I was talking theory.
Well,
I was talking,
but
let's get
the minister
under
has laid
reality.
out the plan a little bit more. He said, no, we're going to give you a 3-year plan.
So
And by the
they
way, we're
have
looking at 300,000 a
They
year.
have no idea what they're doing when it comes to immigration targets in this country. I was in Ottawa as an observer, a little bit more than an observer, in May 1986.
Oh, that's a million years ago.
I'm an old guy. And old man Trudeau, Pierre, he knocked immigration down from 1% of the population, which was 200,000 at the time, 1968. He kicked it down to 85,000.
Yes, I remember that.
When Mulroney came in, they had a discussion in caucus, and they had to decide, is our pension plan going to go bankrupt in 2013 if we don't have 1% population? So Pearson brought it up.
1% growth. So
1% growth.
With a virtually zero population growth, that means that the number of babies born and the number of people who pass away are at even par. You need 1% of the population to replace itself.
Point here is, in one afternoon, government went from 85,000 to about just under 250 as a target. 250,000 as a target. And now,
But that target's about 300,000 now.
now.
Okay.
So in
That's
one
still less than 1% of the 35 million.
In one Wednesday afternoon, they beat the numbers up from 85,000 to about 250,000. And it just happened. And now, what have we, since 1986, what have we done? We've created the immigration industry. Lawyers, consultants, bureaucrats. It's an army of
School
people.
boards.
School boards. Enforcement. We didn't have Canada Border Services before. Now they're walking around. It's a huge industry. But did we go essentially above 250? No.
No, we didn't go above 250.
So the point-
And so the question I want to ask you is, not
Sure.
only didn't we go much above 250, is how many of those 250 or 300,000 do we retain?
Well, bingo. And this is one of the great mysteries. Like the caramel chocolate bar,
But it's not a mystery.
it's a huge, Ottawa makes it a mystery. You were minister, did they tell you what the retention rate is?
Everybody else who keeps track of them tells you that it's about 55% stay.
The people, government won't tell us, Ottawa won't tell us, number one, what's the retention rate, and number two, what's the social service takeout rate. But let's talk retention rate. What you're saying is, and it's true, according to the outside studies, not government studies, that not even half, or around half of the people who become immigrants stay here. But then Ottawa tells us they have a fabulous immigration administration system. Well, how can it be so good if only half stay?
Well, because you have all of the undocumented. They used to call them irregular. They used to even call them illegal.
I call them illegal.
Well, there's a movement afoot that says nobody's illegal. I mean, they're here, they're working.
Joe, I'm
That's
a
what you
lawyer.
want to do.
There's an act. They're illegal. By sugarcoating it, you're making it polite and nice and acceptable. It is not
Yeah,
acceptable.
just trying to give the school boards and the province a way out in all of this.
Well, provincially, I have to respect the province and I respect the school boards.
Why?
Why? Well, from a structural point of view, they went halfway. They went halfway, and they had the guts to write in the Education Act that kids of unlawful parents, illegal parents, can go to school. So they take the money, they take the 12,300, they take the money, they took that step, but they won't go the next step. And I suggest that it was a Supreme Court decision that gave them the entree to take the next step.
Well, you and I probably have a different view on this. My view is that if the kid's here, he goes to school. If the kid goes to school, you don't do anything to interrupt the flow, that family flow going back and forth. Now, you might say you're crazy. Well, maybe I am. But the issue behind
Joe, you stopped being totally crazy on this on December 2015. When
did I get a certificate?
Well, you get a sticker. You get a sticker. Okay. The reason that was so crucial, and I'll draw an analogy. When the Supreme Court talked about abortion rights, it shook the system in this country.
Well, yeah, I remember that because I was in Parliament. It was a big deal, and all that the Supreme Court did. But hold on, Richard. Before you give too much credit, all that the Supreme Court did is it said, we recognize that this issue is a medical issue. It's not a moral or a conscience issue. It did the same thing with respect to gay rights.
That's
it
right.
said this is a legal issue, and it's not anything else.
And what have they done with kids' rights in December?
Well, you know what? They haven't done, in my view, they haven't done the same thing. This is going to get me in trouble with a whole pile of people. I don't want you to throw yourself in that mix.
Okay.
But the same attention to the Supreme Court decision that talked about children's rights and the best interest of the children and the families is something that obliged, in my view, that obliged the minister to send out guidelines and letters, direction to the department to make sure that it doesn't matter. You can have an immigration policy, you can have an immigration program. The fact of the matter is that something doesn't work in the program. You've got, by the government's admission, 1 million people here without status. What are you going to do?
But that's just like with abortion and gay rights. The Supreme Court wasn't just speaking to the federal government, it was talking to who?
Everybody.
Everybody in this country.
Everybody.
And it's the same with the kids' rights. The Supreme Court spoke to the education people, to the teachers, to the cops, to the enforcers.
So I'm going to tell you, so here it is right here.
Yep.
That's the Supreme Court decision. This is just a copy of the docket. So yeah, anybody can go for reference purpose and see it. So it indicates that, people aren't just making things
But I
up
have
on
a
the
question.
fly.
When the abortion decisions came down, when the gay rights decisions came down, all the bureaucrats across the country snapped to attention, saluted the Supreme Court, and they changed the way they did business. Why didn't that happen with this decision?
Well, I don't know, but we left off yesterday on the business of how much of an investment is being made. So I offered on the table that since we brought out the number 12,300 per child.
Yeah.
We put up on the screen just a few moments ago 2 schools, Bishop Romero and Bishop Morocco,
Yeah.
that's frequented by a lot of children who are, from those families that haven't got the status. There's at least another 8 that I can think of in one school board.
Yeah, I can think in one school board, St. Mary's, Stella Maris, St. Matthew, St. Sebastian, St. Mary's of the Angels, St. Clair, St. John Bosco. Do they shut their doors?
No, but
because they're ignoring the Supreme Court?
But you know what? If your immigration officers jump in there, those schools are going to close tomorrow. They'll close. The teachers that teach there are going to be looking for a job. The secretary is going to be looking for a job.
Well,
the accountants and everybody else
the
that's associated with
the minister has to make a decision. If he does not think that the Supreme Court case of 2015, if that case does not control those immigration police, then he has the right to send the cops in there. Let them stand up and say it.
Well, that's not going to happen. I think everybody else who's watching here knows it's not going to happen. But what has to happen is that people who are watching, and people like my paper, quite frankly, Corriere Canadese, or Corcan Media Group, or Go Live TV, have to ramp up the pressure. So if the law doesn't make sense, change the law. If the process creates problems, change the process.
I got a question. In the States, children and immigration is a huge issue with the media. Every church, every union, every commercial operation And in Canada, sounds of silence.
So
Media, nobody.
We're in agreement on that, but the Corriere Canadese is not silent on it. And one of the reasons it's not silent on it, we picked on the Catholic School Board here, but it may be unfairly so. But they've got numbers in the thousands in their school. There's other school boards in the area, the Toronto Public School Board.
Dufferin Peel.
Dufferin Peel. You have the public board there too, in York Region, in Markham, where you have 2 boards in every single one of them. And every one of them has the same experience as the Catholic School Board.
How much involved, Joe?
So if we take a look and we think in terms of extrapolating the numbers, we're talking in the billions. I know the number that you came up with yesterday, and I thought it was a very conservative number. But you're looking in Ontario alone at least $1 billion a year in educational funding to accommodate kids in whom we make an
And
investment.
does Ottawa even know this?
Well, I'm not sure that they make that assessment.
Do they care?
But right now you have a premier, a conservative premier, who's asking the federal government for $200 million to accommodate what I guess works out to about 10,000 Syrian refugees. You got 100,000. You've got 1 million people in Canada already who don't have.
Does anybody in public office think about these things?
Well, you used to be close to public office, and I was in public office.
Yeah, they used to. When I'm an old guy, they used to think
I'm
about
a young
these
guy, and
things.
so what happens? I'm telling you that we do think about this, and so, we've gone over time, and I want to thank everybody and you for your patience with being with me. But I want to thank everybody for watching. Continue to watch us on Facebook, on Go Live TV, on Corcan Media Group, Corriere Canadese, on Facebook, YouTube. We're going to continue hammering away at this theme. It's an absolutely crucially important theme for
right.
Canadian growth, for Canadian demography, and for the Canadian economy.
At least somebody's doing it.
Well, somebody has to do it because we know that all the political people who are looking for office down the road have to look at the issues of the day. This is a crucial one.
Because they will lose if they don't take this
Well,
up.
I don't want to talk about that. As I said, there's 1 million people throughout all of Canada. That's a number that's coming out of federal government. It's not a number that's
Does
coming out
Justin
of.
Trudeau realize this is a problem?
Well, if he's watching, he will now. So thank you once again. Keep in mind, you can go to our Facebook page, Corriere.ca. You can go to YouTube, Corriere.ca. You go Live TV. Go to Corriere Canadese. We come out every day in hard copy. And follow us on this and many other issues. Thank you, Mr. Borax, and thank you to everybody else for watching.